Last week was one of the hardest weeks of my life. Our dog Scooter, a sweet, loyal Pitbull, who has been with us for over a decade, did something that shocked us to our core. Out of nowhere, with no warning or provocation, he bit my boyfriend. It wasn't just a nip. Either it was a full, powerful bite that punctured his skin and made him bleed. I was standing right there when it happened, and in that moment, I didn't recognize my dog. That wasn't the Scooter I knew, the goofy, gentle, and lovable soul who has been a part of our lives for so long. Just over a day after the bite, Scooter had a seizure. It lasted a few minutes, but it felt like hours as I watched him convulse, unable to help, unable to soothe him. He peed himself, disoriented and lost, and in that moment, something inside me broke. It was as though he was finally showing us how much he struggled. I had been asking for a sign, hoping something would tell us what to do next, and there it was, painfully clear yet heartbreaking. Scooter wasn't just my boyfriend's dog, he became my family too. I've known him for 5 years now, and it didn't take long before I loved him like he was my own. He was always a bit of a character, kind, goofy, endlessly energetic. He would bounce around like a puppy, full of life. The bond we shared was deep. I could never leave for a trip without knowing that he'd refuse to eat until I returned. I was his person, just as much as he was mine. But the past year had been hard on him. After we moved into our new home, things started to change. He'd always had his share of health issues, constant allergies, chronic skin problems, small cancerous tumors that appeared here and there. But once we moved, it was like his body began to betray him all at once. His allergies flared up, he'd lick his paws until they bled and got infected. Anal gland abscesses became a frequent and painful problem, and his anxiety took a turn for the worse. He would bark uncontrollably when we were out, panic at the smallest noises, and even get scared by the sound of our phone's text tone. We had to change it because he'd pace around in a panic every time it went off. At night, it was as if he couldn't rest. He'd wake us up 10 times or more, unable to settle, unable to find peace. He started having accidents in his cage, something that had never been an issue before. If we left him alone for even an hour, he'd be drenched in anxiety, peeing himself. Sometimes he'd defecate while sleeping, not even aware that it happened. And then there were those strange behaviors, staring off into walls, pacing, hiding in rooms for no reason. We thought it was just old age creeping in, or maybe his allergies making him miserable. In some ways, he looked healthy. He had so much energy that people often mistook him for a young dog, not realizing that his restlessness wasn't happiness but anxious energy that he couldn't shake. We tried everything we could to make him comfortable. Daily doses of trazodone became necessary just to calm him, to give him a little peace. I spent hours researching, looking up signs of doggy dementia, piecing things together. But just when we thought we'd found a rhythm, just when things seemed to stabilize, the bite and the seizure happened, one right after the other. After his seizure, we rushed him to the vet. They explained that these were signs of something much bigger and darker than we'd feared, a brain tumor, possibly lesions. They told us that the aggression, the seizure, and his increasingly erratic behavior were likely all connected, and that things would probably deteriorate quickly from here. It felt like a gut punch. Scooter was only 10 and a half, but he was covered in tumors, his mind was slipping, and he seemed to be suffering more than we had allowed ourselves to admit. We had always promised ourselves that we wouldn't let him suffer unnecessarily. We couldn't imagine him fading away alone, scared and confused in his crate. But still, it felt impossible. Here was our energetic, happy boy. How could we make the choice to let him go? We decided to give him the best weekend we could, a farewell filled with all the things he loved. We called friends and family to come say goodbye, to give him belly rubs and scratches behind his ears. We cooked him prime filet mignon with potatoes, let him devour a mountain of whipped cream, and took him to the beach one last time. For that weekend, he was like his old self. He was happy, tail wagging, surrounded by everyone who loved him. That night, we even let him sleep with us in bed for the first time, snuggling close as if trying to make up for all the time we'd have to let go of. But even then, we could see him slipping. He had little twitches that he hadn't before. He tried to do his favorite trick, lifting his right paw to shake for a treat, but he couldn't quite manage it. Sometimes he would stare off into the distance, as if caught somewhere between our world and his. He'd drift in and out of awareness, and each time he returned to us, it felt like a bittersweet blessing and a painful reminder. Saying goodbye to him that final time was one of the hardest moments I've ever lived through. I knew in my heart that it was the right decision, but as we walked back into the house without him, the emptiness was unbearable. The silence felt heavy. I looked at the spot where he used to curl up and waited to see his face, to hear his collar jingle, but there was nothing. Just an aching void where our happy boy used to be. The sadness and heartbreak are overwhelming. I keep replaying moments in my mind, questioning if we could have waited, if maybe we could have held on just a little longer. It's a brutal, unforgiving feeling. I miss him so much, and it's hard not to feel regret. Not to wish I could turn back time and hug him just once more, or give him one last treat. Our home feels different now, quieter but colder. I know, deep down, that we made the best choice for him, that he deserved peace after all he had gone through. But this heartbreak is something I wouldn't wish on anyone. Losing a pet isn't just losing an animal. It's losing a friend, a companion, a part of the family. And for us, losing Scooter has left a hole in our hearts that nothing else could fill. This grief is raw, and this emptiness hurts. But I'll hold on to every beautiful memory, every goofy moment, every snuggle and every wag of his tail. He was our baby, our silly, loving boy, and no amount of time will ever change that.